So the first question says, if the last digit of an acceptable product code is 1, it must be true that and then we get a bunch of options. So the first thing we want to do whenever we have a question that gives us some additional information is think about how to incorporate that additional information. Now we're told if the last digit of an acceptable product code is 1, well, let's write that down and see where we can go from there. One thing you can do on the test itself, so you're not erasing and making a mess of the available space that you have, is to just draw a little diagram next to the question in the test booklet rather than in the big piece of blank space, just so then it's separated from everything else and you don't have to erase it later. So here we say the last digit is 1. Well, what we can say now is we've taken the 1 out of the running. We've already placed him. So what deductions can we make once we know that? Well, let's look at our diagram here. Now, I generally don't advise making temporary marks on the diagram itself because it's just a pain to erase. So as much as you can think about it without messing it up, it's good. If you ever get stuck, it is possible to make temporary marks just so that you can effectively use the process of elimination. So for example here, if we've already placed the number 1, it's taken. And we can say, does that tell us where other things specifically need to go? And what you'll notice here is that if the 1 is taken, the 2 is the only option left for this first digit. So then we can say that the 2 has to go here. And then by virtue of this rule here, well, if the second digit has to be 2 times the first digit, then this has to be the 4. We also know that the third digit has to be less than the fifth digit, and because we made the fifth digit 1, that would tell us that the third digit, in fact, has to be 0. And then the only thing left over is the 3, and we know exactly what's going on with this particular combination. So now we've done as much as we can up front with the question, and we want to think back as to what the question is asking, and then look at the answer choices. So the question says, it must be true that. Okay, well, we should be able to figure that out because we know what this looks like. So choice A says the first digit is 2. Oh, well, that's our answer right there. We're done. We can just quickly skim the other answers to make sure that we haven't messed up somewhere, that we only get one thing that must be true. So must it be true that the second digit is 0? No. Third digit is 3? No. Fourth digit is 4? No. Fourth digit is 0? Also no. So we're left with an answer of A for this question. And what you'll start to notice is when you're asked a question of the form must be true or must be false, a lot of times you'll be able to get to it directly by just checking the answer choices. When we get to a question that asks whether something could be true or could be false, it's actually going to be easier to utilize process of elimination. Question 2 reads, which one of the following must be true about any acceptable product code? So in this case, we're not given any additional information, and we should be able to deduce this from what we have already here. The answer choices are as follows. Choice A reads, the digit 1 appears in some position before the digit 2. Choice B reads, the digit 1 appears in some position before the digit 3. Choice C reads, the digit 2 appears in some position before the digit 3. Choice D reads, the digit 3 appears in some position before the digit 0. And choice E reads, the digit 4 appears in some position before the digit 3. Now, this seems a little bit more tricky at first because we don't have concrete information here that addresses any of these particular answer choices. So what you want to think about doing is using the information that you've already figured out to at least rule out some of the answer choices and then see how we can deal with what's left. In this case, what you'll notice is by answering question 1, you came up with a product code that works. So when we say which of the following must be true about any acceptable code, and then we have an answer choice of the digit 1 appears in some position before the digit 2, well, we know that that does not have to be true because we have a counterexample that we just figured out in the last question. So let's write down our answer choices so we can at least cross out the ones that are easy to get rid of. So choice A just doesn't make sense because we have a counterexample. Choice B, which reads the digit 1 appears in some position before the digit 3, has the same issue in that we have a counterexample that we just figured out in the previous question. So it was really good that we used a strategy of writing this by the question and not erasing it, because then you have that to use at your disposal in future questions, which can oftentimes be very helpful. Choice C says the digit 2 appears in some position before the digit 3, so we don't have a counterexample for that here. Choice D reads the digit 3 appears in some position before the digit 0. Again, counterexample, so we can rule out choice D. And choice E reads the digit 4 appears in some position before the digit 3. Well, here we don't have a counterexample, so we're down to choices C and E. But just by looking at what we've already done, we were able to get rid of 5 of the answer choices very quickly. So now let's think about what to do with the 2 remaining answer choices. One way to show that something must be true is via what mathematicians refer to as proof by contradiction. For example, we can test whether the statement, the digit 2 appears in some position before the digit 3, has to be true by trying to make it false and seeing whether or not we reach a contradiction. In other words, if we try to put the digit 2 after the digit 3, and we have no possible combinations that work, then we know that in fact the digit 2 has to come before the digit 3. So let's test answer choice C via that method and let's see what happens. So if we're going to think about answer choice C, I'm just going to draw a little visual next to the answer choice so that again I don't have to erase it when I'm testing choice E if it comes down to that. So now I'm trying to place the digit 2 after the digit 3 in order to see whether that is in fact possible. Looking here, say the earliest that the digit 3 could appear is 3rd, which would mean that the earliest that the digit 2 could appear is 4th. So we've limited our placements for the digit 2 to be somewhere here. And so, well, why is this relevant? Well, let's go through and think about what other restrictions we have on the digits 2 and 3. You'll notice here that you really only have 2 possibilities for the first 2 digits. You could either have 1 and 2, or you could have 2 and 4. In either case, you're using 2 in one of those first 2 spots. We can actually say then, we can update this a little bit and say it's actually not possible for the 2 to be used 3rd, 4th, or 5th because then we don't have it left over to use in one of these spots here. So we can actually update this and say, well, wait a minute, this actually doesn't work. And once we know that, we can see graphically that if the 2 has to go somewhere here, and the 3 has to go somewhere here, then the 2 in fact does have to come before the 3. But we saw that more clearly by trying to place it after the 3 and saying, well, wait a minute, that actually causes a problem. So in response to the question, which of the following must be true, it must in fact be true that the digit 2 appears in some position before the digit 3, and the answer to question 2 is C.